Hi, and welcome back to Data Innovation Summit. Today with us we have Jake Bengtson, who is a technical evangelist at Cloudera.
Correct.
So happy to have you here, guys. And we wanted to discuss today a little bit the topic of cloud versus on-prem versus hybrid data management, or just in any case, even generative and applied AI, but in this era when everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think we're seeing a very large need for that today. You know, Cloudera has been preaching hybrid for a while, but generative AI is really the perfect use case for it. If we look at the costs that people are incurring within public cloud when you start to do these generative AI use cases, it's very, very expensive to run a multiple GPU use case. So a lot of our customers are looking to, how can I do this at a more cost-efficient way? And the answer to that many times is running on-prem and acquiring those GPUs and be able to do that on-prem. So it's a real, public cloud is great for experimentation, and be able to prove out concepts and understand how much compute power do we need for this use case, but then on-prem is really good for controlling costs and especially as well, like keeping your data private.
Right, which leads us basically to one of the most discussed topic today, because many of the organizations are right now experimenting, as you mentioned, with this technology, especially LLMs and generative AI. But however, not many have actually seen the fruit of that labor because they're still in the POC and having a hard time to scale into business. What is your thoughts on that, and what you see in the market as the challenges that the organization has?
I would say that's spot on for what we're seeing amongst our customers. Like, I think everyone can prove out really quick a very simple application to say, like, hey, it's really cool, I can get a large language model to respond to me, but when they start rolling that out to a real production-worthy use case, one, it's very, like I've already talked about, like cost prohibitive to be able to get the kind of performance that users expect. Because everyone's used ChatGPT, they expect it to act in a certain way to get those answers back very quickly, and to be able to do that with a very large language model like GPT-4, it's very expensive to do. So they start to look at, what is the value actually of doing this? And then as well, just in order to get a model to act predictably, it can be a little tricky because these large language models, they can be very creative, which is why we think they're valuable, but then in an enterprise context, that's not really what you want. You don't want your chatbot for flight booking to be giving answers like, what is the most important Harry Potter novel? That's not important. So you want to be able to lock it down for the given situation, which is hard to do.
That was a good point that that you mentioned, the efficiency of these models as well. Today there have been a number of discussions where we were discussing like the difference between large language models and small language models, right? What is your thought about that? When should a person or an organization actually consider one of those two?
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies around looking at the performance of a small language model and a large language model and how well they do in specific tasks. So if you look at like a 7 billion parameter model compared to an 80 billion parameter model, that 80 billion parameter model is going to be able to do lots of things and be able to do them all pretty well. And then compared to the 7 billion parameter model, without any additional instructions, it won't do as well. But what they found is that you can do methods like parameter efficient fine tuning to really teach that smaller model how to do one specific task really well. Like a really common example is natural language to SQL. So if I can teach that small language model to do this one task, and in an organization that's all I really want it to do, I don't need it to be able to answer what is the meaning of life. I just need it to be able to do that one thing, then that's highly valuable. I can do that enterprise use case at a lower price point because I don't need as much to be able to run that smaller model.
Another thing is that basically, technology providers such as yourself have come already a long way where you can actually have pre-built like prototypes in your platforms where people don't even have to think about, like how do I train on this and etc. Should I use this and that? So I think that is it's the way forward because it should be as simple as possible, right? How does it look for your organization when it comes to prototypes and pre-built models?
So we call them accelerators for ML projects. They're really end-to-end data science projects that are deployable with a single click within our environment. They're born from the observation that data scientists, when they work on these new projects, they don't start from scratch. You go out and find out if someone's done something similar to what you're doing, and then you deploy that, you try to build it within your environment, copy that code and run it. But doing that has downsides, right? Like you don't know, just because you found a blog on Medium that's doing something similar to what you're doing, is that really the best way to be able to do it? You don't have any guarantees around that. So we provide a catalog of these amps and that's the acronym we use for them,
Right.
the AMP. We provide a catalog for our data scientists so that they can use those as a reference example to get started in these use cases. Because there's very common types of things that everyone's trying to do right now, like retrieval augmented generation.
Right.
Or
Very
Path I
popular.
talked
Yes.
about.
Yes.
There's some pretty common architectures
Yeah.
that you can start with, and you can do that initial prototype to prove out value, to be able to understand how much compute I need and so forth, and then you can take that and start customizing. Especially today with companies like Hugging Face that provide all the foundation models, you don't need to go through, you used to have to be able to train a model from scratch, and you had to get all the data and do that initial work, and that barrier to entry has really been lowered with foundation models, because you can use that as your starting point, bring that in. Hugging Face is one of our partners, makes it very easy to integrate with them, to be able to bring those models within your environment, and to get started with these amps.
Right. You probably have like a number of customers already. Tell us a little bit more about the applications of
So,
this.
like I talked about, a lot of our customers are in that experimental phase, but we actually have one customer that I would say really stands out as an exception to that. They've been in production with multiple generative AI use cases for about a year now. So OCBC is a bank in Singapore, and they have a lot of use cases around like code completion. They have use cases in chatbots as well in knowledge services to be able to do like document summary and so forth. And what's really cool to see about them is that they're really a perfect example of working in a hybrid way. So they start out, like any new use case they have, they'll generally start with one of the managed services, like your for example, the OpenAI endpoints within Azure, to be able to see, can I use a large language model for this use case? But once they figure out that that's possible, then they start looking at open source models to say, can we avoid hitting those endpoints and having to pay that cost for it? And then once they prove that they can do it with the open source model in public cloud, then they look to move that on-prem to be able to do it at an even lower price point.
Right, interesting.
So they have 3 or 4 of these generative AI use cases that they're doing, and they follow that pattern just about every time.
Right, cool. Before we finish, another topic that has been discussed today, it was around responsible AI and of course AI governance, because those two are a little bit intertwined, right?
Yeah.
What is your thoughts regarding that? How can an organization be better with governing and AI and responsible data and everything else? Because this is a very, very big FOMO for many, not FOMO, but fear for many organizations, which is stopping them even to try to move forward with productionization of LLMs and stuff.
Yeah, one of the hard things, like we talked about, there's these foundation models, your GPT 3.5 or Llama 3 that just came out, and they're open source models that you can download and use, but for the most part, the data sets for these models that they were trained on have not been fully open sourced. The parameters for the model are open source, but we don't really fully understand the biases possibly within that data that go into the models, and so there's a little bit of issues with being able to trust how these models are going to act within enterprise situations. So there's a lot of libraries out there. A lot of people are looking at how do I evaluate the models. My biggest suggestion would be to really make sure you're planning to spend the time to really test all the edge cases of a large language model that you plan to use, and use technologies like one of our partners, NVIDIA, has the NEMO framework.
Right.
They have NEMO guardrails.
They were talking about it today.
Yeah. So NEMO guardrails is we have an app that actually demonstrates how to use guardrails to be able to build in some of that control. It's like I talked about, given a specific enterprise situation, you don't want that large language model going off topic and talking about things that you don't want it to respond in the context of your business. So there's a lot of effort in there. I'd say we're still very much in the infancy of understanding some of the ethical considerations of generative AI, but it's an exciting time and just a time that requires people to really put in the effort to be able to understand the given context of the questions.
Perfect. That was awesome. Thank you so much for today, and enjoy the conference.
Yeah,
yes, thanks so much.
Thanks.